Hi everyone. In this video we are going to talk about plugin editor, what all section it have and how can you start with the plugin development. So let's start. To create any plugin, just click on this button, create a plugin, and let me just give it like test v6. Just give it any name that you want to. You can also change it later. So broadly, plugin is divided into these 7 sections. First one is journal section. The journal section is more of a your plugin public appearance. Let me just take an example and let me show you. So let's suppose this is a toolbox plugin. Most of us we have used it. So all this like toolbox, that name of the plugin, all this will be can be changed from here. So just to give you idea, so this is the public name of that plugin. And if you want to change the logo, like this logo, you can simply go to the journal section and then public logo and upload your logo. Next section is description section. So whatever you put inside here, like this, it will goes here. In the description field, put like what exactly this plugin can do, why you have built this plugin, what all the feature of this plugin. Next is service URL. Service URL is kind of your documentation of your plugin. If you have any documentation link, do provide into the service URL, or you can also provide your app editor mode also, so that people can check out how exactly you can integrate this plugin into their app. Next is instruction section. So the instruction section define how exactly one can use your plugin. So for example, if your plugin have a elements, so define what is the name of the element and how can anyone build the app using this plugin. So for example, you end up building an audio plugin and you have an element with the name of audio. So you will say, okay, there's an element that is audio and you drag it on the your bubble design editor and then pass the URL of that file or the name of the file that you want to, that kind of thing. And even this plugin has provided this documentation, add the element to the page for those and whatever the other, and all this information goes here like inside the instruction section. Next up is the demo app. So do provide the bubble preview link here so that bubble can team can review your plugin and they can even see okay how exactly like what all functionality your plugin provides, and this is helpful for your audience also so that they can check it before installing it. The next one is plugin categories. So it's just for the informational purpose. There is no uses of this categorization. You can pass, just check the list which is more related to your plugin. Next section is shared section. So here we are set up the technical details about the plugin editor basically. The first one is the plugin version, which plugin you want to use. So this plugin editor till now have released 5 versions. Also the 0 is the initial version. So I would recommend you to use the latest version, that is version 4, because version 4 run on the Node 18 version, that is the latest. And if you ever going to use jQuery in your app in a plugin, so you should enable that. Now comes to the dynamic header. So this section, dynamic header, anything that you want to provide across the app, that should be go here. For example, if you ever use intercom or chat bot, that place, if you go to their intercom website, let me show you intercom. This kind of bot available across the app, does not matter which page you are in. So if you need to provide something, okay, it is not applicable here, but you got idea like whatever you need to provide across the app, that you paste it here, like the code that you pasted here. And if you ever use a Google Analytics give you the code that you need to paste in your app header. And if you want to build a plugin based on something that goes across your app, your user app, so you can provide the code here. To give you the example, let me show you the intercom plugin. I think, yeah, if you see the intercom plugin and go to the shared section, you can see they have provided a JavaScript, passes JavaScript here in the HTML header, and anyone can install this plugin. Let me show you. If I just simply install this plugin, yeah, intercom is there. So intercom is there, and if I just preview the page, if you see, this is the intercom script that is added on my app label. This is not on page level, this is added on the app level. So even if I go any page, this script will remain there. If you need to integrate any code that you want to put into the app header, that goes inside that in the shared section. Perfect. Now comes to the additional key. So additional key is like a key value thing. In your plugin, if you require to take any input from the user that is across the app, like you need to ask API key or client ID, client password or client secret, that goes here. So whatever you defined here, let's suppose you say client ID and try not to put a space between the key name and just say public and simply add the key. Whatever you defined here, it will automatically goes. Let me just add this. Let me show you. If you see here, I have defined client ID additional key and it comes here. And you can access this client ID value inside your element and action section also. And this is very secure way. If you define your key as a private, no one can access that key value basically, apart from the plugin installer, obviously. That's the purpose of the additional keys. And next comes the shared asset and resources. So this works as a file uploader manager. If you have used the bubble and if you go in the file manager, you can upload any file and you get a URL. The same way you can upload any file here. Let me show you quickly. And you get a URL of that file and then you can copy that URL and use it anywhere across your plugin, be it an element, action or wherever you just want to pass it. Typically people use it to store the libraries, to store the logos or any file that you use it into your plugin. I hope everything is perfectly understandable till now. Let's go to the API calls. That API calls, it completely similar as the API connector, but with just a little bit twist. So if you're familiar with the API app connector in your Bubble app, if you want to add any API, you simply click on add an API connection, give it a name and pass the authentication whichever required for that API to work on. And then when you add a shared header, you get a two options, like one is hidden and one is secret. And also if you add any API call and add any parameter, you got a three option: public, hidden and secret. This is a major difference. Like in your API connector, you only see like you have only two options, either by default public and otherwise it's a private. But here you got a three options. So what is the meaning of this public, hidden, secret? So if you set up any parameter as a public, that means your plugin installer, whoever installing your plugin, can change its value, whatever the key you passing and its value, and your end user of that, when you preview that app, anyone can access its value. But if you make it hidden, now your plugin installer can't change its value, but it will be visible at a preview page. If you do the right click and inspect and go into the network call, you can see the value. But if you set up it's a secret, then even your plugin installer will not change the value, and even on the preview page no one can see its value for that particular key. I hope you are understandable. But apart from that, it's pretty much similar to the API connector. You simply set up pass your URL here, pass the request method here, and simply initialize the API call and set up. And same way, it uses can be as a data and action. So if you want to use like your API call inside your Bubble UI editor, you set up call as a data. Otherwise, you will set up as an action. Now comes to the third part, element. So this is very important part. If you need to create any element, if you go to your Bubble app and you can see these are the visual element, all this, and then there is a containers are there. These all are element, and that mostly these work as a client side. So whatever the logic, like for example that outline icon element works at a client side. Nothing is related to the server side or something. Let me show you the quick example of the element, but for the more detailed one you can reference my other videos. If you create any element, let's say sum. So we are going to create an element that takes two elements and return a sum, just to demonstrate you. Okay, As soon as you add the sum element, it have a two category, like a visual element or input form. So if you require to enter any value, you can also like a input form or like this kind of UI. If you just search for the input, so this kind of UI where directly UI is user entering it, then you choose that as a input form. Otherwise, or most of these element are the visual element, and then you can choose the icon. Whatever the icon you choose here, it will goes here, like this T, this button, and all this. These are the bubble properties, and as the name suggests, like border, padding, whichever you need to enable it in your plugin, you just enable it and define in the below here in this section. In the element plugin, these three are the most important function, like initialize, update, and preview. Okay, let's take the example of the initialize. Initialize is basically it called once per instance of that element. So whenever you drag an element here and preview it, when the page is previewed very first time, whatever you have written inside the initialize function, it will call. And next come to the update function. Update function basically it's a, you can say, if any value of your plugin change, this function will run. And next is preview. So whenever you drag your element here, like for example you drag that link, so whatever the preview it appear here, that goes into that preview section. So whatever the code you written, that will call whenever you drag your element from here to your plugin editor. So let me just quickly show you. Okay, we are going to build a one quick example of the sum. Take a two input from user and return its sum. So to take an input, we need to define inside that field. So let's say we are taking like a input one, and this is the editor type, like is it a static value, dynamic value, and we are going to say it's a dynamic value and say it's a number. And you can even pass the documentation, or you can define it as optional or not. And the second value is input. Perfect. Same again, dynamic value, number. Now we need to return the data. In your element, there is no kind of return the value thing, but element provide a expose state. Expose state are nothing but, if you ever built a bubble app, then you know, okay, whenever you reference this element, and let me just drag one text. For example, this is the button convert to PDF. If you say dynamic data, button convert to PDF, all these are the expose state. So this plugin, this element has exposed to field like a width and height. So that says is the expose state. Perfect. I hope. And you don't have to worry about, you will understand everything in this video. I have gone into the detail in other videos also, like how element work and how other section of this plugin editor works. But right now we are just taking two value and we are exposing one state. That's sum, that going to be number, obviously, like number and num. Okay. Now we can directly go into the plugin update method and first initialize, like get its value, whatever the user has input. So if you just simply put a like console dot log and simply say input one and say properties dot input one. So this will return the value of your input to one, whatever the user has entered. Same way you can just simply say copy and paste it. Now, if you want to make a sum, so how you do a sum in the JavaScript, simply say let sum, just define the variable and simply say properties dot input one plus properties dot input two, and that simply calculate the sum. And now we need to return the sum data to our expose state. So how we will do that? Just copy the name of that expose state. Simply say instance dot publish state and define like the variable name and simply return the value and say in our case it's sum data. Perfect. Now I will just show you how can you simply use this element. And if you just create a new page, test element. Okay, as soon as you drag your element that you defined here with the name of sum, and you can search it here also, sum. And if you drag that, you can see like by default this there's no plugin preview available because we have not written any code inside the initialize. But it exposed two input field. One is Let's say I pass it 8 and second we pass it 16, because we have defined this input 1 and input 2 as a number here in the field section. And to show the data, I will just drag the text element and say sum is, and go to the element, and you see we have a expose state as a sum. And if you just preview this page, so if you see, as soon as this page is loaded, our update function called out, and this is the input 1, it expose, input 2 is console printed out, and the sum, it return it here. Okay, so this is how update function works. But if you want to call something only once, and that then you will pass that data into the initialize. But if you want to preview the element, so this is how I am defining the preview icon. So right now if you see, if you drag that sum, it's literally giving no plugin preview available because we have not written any code. But now since we have written our code, and if you just refresh this page, now you can see our preview have that X icon because I just passed the Jano logo. Yeah, so that's why it's showing the Jano logo. Perfect. And if you see the plugin like a default width and height, and if you go here, you can customize that also like a default. So I can say 20, 20, and it will be 2020. And you just need to drag it again. If you see, I have dragged it and it now shows as a 2020 because I have set a default with 2020. Perfect. Now, if you see, if you click on this plugin editor, it don't show any responsive thing, padding that we normally see in the every element. So that you can enable it from here. Like if you want to responsive, just make it as a click it and refresh the page. And my page level is, now if you see here, the responsive is available, like this neft and all, everything is there. But if you just enable the resizable also, it will also give an option to enter the width and height of the user, height of the element. And if you just click over it, go to layout, now you can have a height and you can uncheck that. And then based on this, now it's a responsive and resizable. And the same again, you can play with ease other properties. And as soon as you enable these resizable responsive, if you then go to the update section and click on, so this is expose all these functions that you can get value whatever the user has chosen and pass into your code and use it inside your code. Now comes to the event section. So event are like if you have into a bubble app, if you go to workflow, all these are the event. So if you need to set up something, so you can pass it here. Next is element action. Element action, whenever you drag any element here, it's related action. Like suppose you have set up a condition use logged out. So if I define any function here, element action, it can be accessed from here. Perfect. I hope you get a gist of this element section, how that works. Now we will move to the next section, that is action. Action are the backend action, like whatever you defined here. So basically we use action for the running a backend operation that is run on the bubble server. And if you just create a new action, again I'm just creating one new action for sum to input, and here you can define action type and action server side. So you need to change it to the server side, and now the code whatever you run it here, it run on the bubble server. So just to give you one example, the field is same as the input value. Like if we say input 1, say dynamic value number, say input 2, input dynamic value number, and it have a return value. Return value basically whatever this action will return to the user. Let's say sum calculated, sum we want to return it. and say it's a number. Perfect. Now the same as we have done in the element, we say variable let sum cal is equal to properties dot input 1 plus properties dot input 2, and now return and the key will be key this one name and say sum cal. Perfect. Now it will just make it sum, and if you go to your page, you don't need to drag anything. Like in case of element we need to drag some element, but in case of the action you don't need to drag. Simply put any button that you want to, after click on you want that action to be called, and say add workflow, and then now say sum, and you can see sum is there, and asking to input, like you say 19 27, and you can store that into the state. Let's say state we are going to create is output. Simply say output and say it's a number type. Then you can refer result of step 1. Since we have only one return value, it automatically put that calci underscore sum. And now if you simply run it, and let me show it the output here, whatever the text, just preview it. Perfect. Now if you just click on this button, that the code written inside this will be run. Okay, this should have some issue. We have to, okay, because I have messed up with something. Okay, now it will be perfect. If you click on it, if you see the answer it given 47, and whatever the code that we have written inside here, it will run as soon as you click on the button. So this is the action side, and also this also support the node module. And if you want to add any node library, simply check this and write a code to import that library here. It automatically pick that library and sync it. I hope you are understanding it. If you have any question, chime into the Discord server and ask any question. Now go to the setting page. This basically setting page. First, here we can define the test app ID which you want to test with. So right now we have defined this YouTube test, this one, and so that I can test my plugin. And now the plugin distribution. So private plugin, if you don't want to upload on the Bubble plugin store, and also want to share with like privately with your app ID. If you want to make it free, make it as an open source. If you want to put a price number on this plugin, just make it as a commercial. As soon as you make it commercial, and it gives you two options, like if you want to run a subscription or one time, or like both the things. So based on the requirement and based on the preference, you can pass it. And after done everything, like you need to submit a version so that Bubble can review your plugin also. You can even sync your code with your GitHub. Simply click on Git synchronize with GitHub, and it will create a new repo in the very first time when you click it, and your code will be synced. And if you want to invite any other plugin editor, just put their email ID, and you both can collaborate on it. Next is review. So if your app is published and if someone put a review, you can see all the reviews here. I hope this video helped you to understand what all the section of the plugin editor. And if you have any issue, just let me know into the Discord server. Happy to help you. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.